I'm back, folks. How we doing? How we doing? Did that review go off well? It's been I don't do as many live streams lately, so I'm a little bit more apprehensive about the technical stuff and like the knowing that it's all going to be working while I'm not paying attention. I need an assistant or something like that. But yeah, how we doing, folks? Starbuck, thank you for the confirmation that it went off well. Brad T, apologies for the jump scare, but we're here. I'm glad you're here too. People nozzle peepers. People nozzle peepers? No, I think you got to put the people and the peepers closer together, but I'm not sure what the order is. Nozzle people, nozzle peeper people. Say that 3 times fast. Say it 1 time fast. I dare you. I can't do it. Okay, Matsushima Michiro saying, looks like you've been converted to HS18 on everything. And yeah, that is kind of true. So what Matsushima, I apologize, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, is pointing out is the tips that I've gotten here. So I mentioned this thing comes with Moondrop spring tips. I'm not using them. I'm using these earphones HS18 tips. You see it? They've got the word Fio branded on them. And I feel like these things just improve the bass quality on almost everything I put them on, which is weird. The original IM that I kind of had that realization with was the Moondrop S8, which is an all balanced armature set, not known for having the most tactile bass because it is all balanced armature. But I found that when applying these tips, it actually gave it a little bit more of a DD character. So because of that, I just keep throwing it onto stuff. I don't remember it necessarily improving the bass quality on the Dusk. The Dusk sounded fantastic bass quality even with the stock spring tips, but I did nonetheless switch over to these just because I felt like I was getting a more consistent seal. With the spring tips, I like on the Blessing shell design, I kind of go between a medium and a small on the spring tips. With the mediums, they fit and seal great. But you know, they fit a little bit more shallow, so the IM is just kind of protruded just a little bit extra. Whereas with the small tips, I get a deeper fit, and I like that fit better, but the seal is less consistent. Basically, if I move around, if I'm sleeping, I mentioned I sleep with these, that's honestly mostly where the seal consistencies become a problem. If I'm sleeping with the small spring tips, I can break a seal, and it becomes kind of annoying and fiddly to deal with. So I did find that these tips are just kind of the best of both worlds. They give me that shallow fit that I prefer, and they fit more consistent when I'm sleeping. Side Sound, what's up? How you doing, Jamie? Thanks for bringing up the DSP cable noise. Yep. For me, that was the biggest thing that turned me into just using it with a 3.5 mil. It doesn't seem to get talked about very much. That's actually kind of surprising, to be honest. I haven't watched other reviews on this guy because that's typically what I do is I try to avoid watching reviews until I'm done with my review. So that's what I'm going to be. Well, I got family coming over today, watching a UFC event. So I might not be watching reviews today, but some point this weekend I will be catching up on the Dusk reviews. But yeah, that is actually a little surprising to hear because the noise that this guy makes, the little weird phantom noises, you could ignore it, right? I could ignore it, but they're pretty annoying. And it makes me wonder if it's like doing other things to the sound. There is actually, I meant to spend some more time diagnosing this, and now that I'm done with the review, I think I probably will. But I initially heard this IM at Can Jam in New York about a month ago, and I initially listened to it on 3.5 on the analog version, and then I switched over to the DSP cable that Crinacle had there, and because, again, it wasn't working with my DAP actually, I had to plug it into Crin's phone. And I was listening to my usual go-to track of Break for Lovers by Men I Trust. And immediately on the DSP cable, I was hearing this weird like treble resonance that I was not hearing on the standard analog. And I wasn't sure if this was like a thing with, like it almost sounded like the driver was like vibrating or something like that. It sounded really weird and like very obvious to me as someone who listens to that song all the time. And so I was wondering, I was like, is this unit? Is there something wrong with this unit that we have at Can Jam? Is the cable kind of introducing that? Because again, I have some trust issues with this cable, having had, you know, lackluster experiences with it before. Or is it something else that I'm not accounting for? Again, I'm listening to it, this song on Crin's phone using Spotify. I don't know the answer yet at this point. What I will say is I don't hear it when I'm listening to this thing on analog at all. And when I'm listening to this thing on DSP on my laptop, I didn't hear it. When I listened to it with DSP on my Google Pixel, I did hear it. Now the difference is that this might be the difference, is that this is what I gotta spend some more time with. The difference is that I don't have my music library on my Pixel, so I have to use Spotify. And so my hypothesis at this point, again, given that it didn't have that sound when I listened to this cable on my computer, but did with this cable on my phone as well as on Crin's phone, is that there's just something wrong either with that recording of the song on Spotify or some other just weird issue with the way that Spotify interacts with upsampling or something like that. Possibly, I don't know. But that was another reason, like immediately when I heard this thing on the DSP cable, it was a worse experience for me. And it wasn't something that I necessarily resolved. All right, sorry, I wasn't paying attention to chat as I was going through that. Jamie, I saw you followed up. So you notice the noise most when you're listening at quieter levels? Oh yeah, because it's interesting. I think that the phantom noises don't seem to change volume with the volume output level of the device. It seems like it's kind of a static level. So that would make sense. You know what's interesting though is I tried recording those sounds when I was doing my review of the May, because again, this cable has been around. The phantom noises on this are also on the May, which I noticed months ago. I tried recording it with a Zoom H1 audio recorder and I couldn't pick it up, which was actually really weird because it was like super obvious and audible to me, but the Zoom H1 would not record it. And I'm not sure why. Supernaut saying some digital cables just have noise, disappointing but true. Yeah, it's like a weird, I'm sure it's something to do with the DAC and the analog conversion that's going on, because it's very distinct. It's not just like a typical hiss. It's like this, it almost sounds like lightsabers. It's like, and then like it comes in and then it gets a little bit quieter. Like that's how I typically hear it. Resolve, what's up, Andrew? How you doing? You're saying the digital noise thing doesn't seem to be the same across units. Interesting. I know several people who had the issue, but also some who don't. On the unit I have, it does occur though. I mean, here's what I'll say. I've got 3 of these cables. They all do it. There you go. Snacks saying interesting that Crinacle mentioned that they noticed the noise when EQing bass too high, but the final version still has some. I guess for your DSP is fundamentally broken. I think it is a thing that is fundamental of the free DSP. Because even if, I guess I didn't test this, I could test this, maybe this would be worth testing, is listening to these. Basically, if you switch away from the EQ profiles, you can go into a parametric EQ setting where you're not EQing the built-in profiles, you're EQing from a baseline of nothing. Ostensibly, if I were to go into the app and go toggle to the PEQ setting and have no adjustments on it, I could get the sound of this DAC without any EQ going on. And ostensibly that could tell me that the sound is either just happening from the DAC or maybe it's part of the DSP process. Because to be honest, I don't know. And that's a simple test I could do that I haven't done. Fresh Bach D saying it's a DAC the size of your fingernail. What else can you expect? I mean, to be honest, look, I'm looking for it around here. Here we go. Look, this is the Apple dongle. Same size, if not even a little bit smaller. Now, okay, this one's got some DSP going on in it, but this guy doesn't have those problems. Apple dongle proves that you don't need a big dongle. It's how you use it that matters. Whoa, where do we go with that? Mergonka Day, thank you for the super chat. How you doing? Asking, will I get a unit of the Dusk audio upcoming collab in the future? Would like you to compare them with the Dusk, and also how do the Dusk compare with the Moondrop Variations or the Awful Performer 8? So I haven't heard yet about the new Giz collab, whether or not I'm getting that, but I imagine I would be since I got his last 2 collabs. So good chance there. And yeah, I'm also pretty excited to compare that to the Dusk. I actually don't know what the price range is coming in on that, so I don't really know where to place it in my head. But versus, you asked about the Variations and the Performer 8 on the Dusk. I'm going to give this the caveat that I haven't heard the Performer 8 in about 6 months, and I haven't heard the Dusk in over a year, okay? So probably not the most useful of comparisons. Or sorry, I haven't heard the Variations in about a year. So maybe not the most useful. But what I will say is that the Variations, I do not really like the bass tuning on that guy. It is really thin in the mid bass and then really big in the sub bass, which kind of gives it a little bit of a disjointed sound. I think the bass quality on the Variations is not nearly as good as this. Like, you don't get that same tactility and snap that you get on the bass here. And then also just because of that weird mid bass, like there were a lot of songs where the Variations just flat out doesn't sound like it has bass. Because where its bass boost is focused, there's a lot of music. It's worth looking into this. There's a lot of music that just does not have a lot of bass content down that low. So having a massive bass shelf below 80 hertz doesn't really do that much good. You need bass between 80, 120 hertz. You need it there. And I think for me, the Dusk is definitely better. Now, in terms of treble performance, this is where I really should have listened to these things and compare in close proximity to make this comparison. But I want to say that the treble is a little bit smoother on the Variations, but that's, again, I haven't heard that thing for a year. Versus the Performer 8, I probably know that even less. Even though I did do a review of it, I spent less time with that guy because I just had it on loan for a little bit. I want to say that the Performer 8 is thinner, a little bit brighter, maybe smoother sounding versus the more tactile Dusk. So for me, my preference is clearly the Dusk. I rated it higher than the Performer 8. Which I guess answers that question in one way, but really it is the tactility, which I think is a lot stronger here on the Dusk. The Performer 8 can come across a little bit smoothed over. The bass doesn't have a whole lot of physicality behind it, despite it being, you know, pretty well tuned. So there you go. There's my semi-useful comparison, because again, I haven't heard them back to back. Rob Hawk, how you doing, man? Enchanted cables have their charms, but can carry some noisy globules of sonic ectoplasm. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. I almost wrote that down verbatim, but I was away from my keyboard when I had that exact same thought. I didn't have that same thought, but thank you. Pragmatic audiophile saying that the cheaper Moondrop C DSP cable is actually better than the free DSP cable. Interesting. I haven't tried that one. My understanding is that it doesn't have parametric EQ. Is that right? Is that what the limitation? I know the build quality is a little bit different on it, but what else is different? Is it just the price? But yeah, I haven't tried that one yet. S2 asking, if you pause and play, do you hear the noise for its split second, and have you tried sweeping frequencies? Yes, you will hear those weird phantom frequency sounds that you hear on this cable. Yes, when you pause and play, you will hear them. It's really kind of sad. And Resolve agrees, sadness for DSP cable. I like the idea of a DSP cable. I mean, let's assume for a moment we don't have those phantom sounds. Let's assume for a moment we don't have an annoying microphone in here, which I know a lot of people want the microphone. So I apologize that I'm out here spreading anti-microphone propaganda, but I just don't want it on my cables. And let's assume that this will work well on, the USB will work well on my DAPs, which again is not a fault of this. My DAPs just don't work well with USB DACs. Assume all those things are solved. Will I be more interested in using a DSP cable? The honest answer is, I think yes. I think yes, although it still won't, I don't know, it's gonna be actually interesting for me, because the main reason I like having an analog cable, apart from not having those problems, is I like a 3.5 mil cable because of how compatible it is with everything that I own, right? I can go from listening to my DAP to listening to my laptop, to listening to my Nintendo Switch, to listening to my iPad, all with the same cable. And I don't have to like repair a Bluetooth thing, then have it, you know, struggle with what do you call that? Multi-point connection stuff. It's just a cable. It's simple. It plugs in. This is the thing that makes me sound the oldest of all the things that I say. That's probably not true, but I like that. I like that compatibility, that ultimate compatibility. That's why I don't really care about balanced cables at all. I don't want to give up that compatibility. With a USB cable, you almost have that same level of compatibility, because this will plug into even a phone where this one won't plug into a phone. So I gained some compatibility there. Plugs into my laptop, no problem. And again, assuming it worked, it would plug into my Android-based DAPs, no problem. I think I could plug this into my Nintendo Switch and get audio out of it, although I didn't try that. So at that point, the trade-offs for switching to USB are pretty slim. And then the gains are obviously that you have access to DSP, which, as we kind of talked about, can be super powerful. Can take a fantastic IM and make it sound even more fantastic, or it can take just kind of a meh run-of-the-mill IM and make it sound pretty fantastic, honestly. So yeah, I feel like DSP is definitely the future. I don't want to be sort of a curmudgeon and like be fighting against DSP from the perspective of cables or anything like that, but it's just sort of practical reasons why it's not quite there yet for me, but I think we'll get there eventually. All right, sorry, scrolling through chat. Anyone have any spicy takes on this? Is I'm cribbing from Andrew here. Any spicy takes, or maybe just like not your own spicy? What I'm interested in talking about is kind of like the narrative around this IM, because I feel like, and this is something that I'm noticing lately. Maybe it's just a small groundswell that's going to go away, but it feels like there's a little bit of negativity coming toward the Dusk that I think is not. If your goal is to be finding the stuff that is like the best experience, sound wise, physical wise, all that stuff, I think just marinating yourself in this this weird negativity is probably doing yourself a disservice. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. Some of that was that, you know, the DSP cable, it only sounds good in the DSP cable. I disagree. I think this thing sounds phenomenal without the DSP cable. Yes, it does sound better with the DSP cable, but I think that's true of every single IM. I could make every IM sound better with this cable. Okay. Stock, I think this thing sounds great. You don't need the cable. So I think that particular complaint, that sort of narrative, that's how I would squash that. I've also seen some people complaining about or just kind of noting Moondrop QC, quality control, throwing shade at Moondrop's ability to consistently build a high quality IM. And what I will say to that point is that from my perspective, having been in the hobby for multiple years at this point, I have like 20 plus Moondrop IMs. Here's what I've noticed, okay? What I have noticed is that there are quite a few posts on things like Reddit, even on Discord, of people sharing their experiences with Moondrop IMs having build quality issues, whether that be paint chipping, or in the case of like the Moondrop Blessing 2, these little panels falling off of them apparently in some cases. And so there's that. I've noticed that for sure, and I understand why other people have noticed that. In terms of like channel matching and stuff like that, I think you can look at Squiglink. There's we've got over 100 people graphing IMs on Squiglink. The ones that are measuring both left and right channels, you can get a good sense of which brands are doing channel matching the best, which ones have the biggest problems. Honestly, I don't think Moondrop has a particular problem with channel matching. Doesn't mean that there won't be some IMs or some units that have channel matching issues. But again, if you were to look at the totality, if you were to look at the measurements on Squiglink as like a very good sample of the totality of what's out there, I don't think that you would find channel matching on Moondrop stuff to be worse than average. In fact, I would probably say it's a little bit better than average. Yeah, I would say it's squarely on the good side of average. All right, we'll just say that. And then I guess from my personal experience, again, I've got like 20 Moondrop IMs. The only issue build quality wise that I've had with the Moondrop IM, I've had a lot of issues with their software. I don't like their software. And part of that is, I think, playing into what I'm talking about here with the DSP execution. I don't really like their software. I don't like their apps. Their TWS IMs, I've kind of stopped reviewing those because they're just not a great experience, but that's a software thing. In terms of physical build quality stuff, the only issue I've had was actually with my original Moondrop Blessing 2, where it came with a 2-pin cable. One side was inverted polarity versus the other side. That's it. Other than that, all of my IMs, and Moondrop IMs are some of my most used, are in, I would say, perfect working order. I don't have any paint chipping issues, although the ones that people typically have issues with paint chipping are not the IMs that I'm using on a daily basis. Mostly I'm using Blessing 2, use Blessing 2 a lot. Mostly I'm using the S8 a lot. And both of those IMs are in perfect physical condition. Look, here is the Blessing 2 Dusk, which I reviewed on this channel in 2020, okay? It's 2024 now. This is what a Moondrop IM looks like. A Moondrop IM that I used fairly heavily. This is what it looks like, 3.5 years later. It looks fine. So might they have some issues with things like paint chipping and stuff like that? Maybe. It seems like it might be a little bit more particular to environment, maybe. Because again, I've got a bunch of them that don't have paint chipping issues, but it could also be usage. But my take on the QC concerns, the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, is I would not deprive myself of this IM or frankly any other Moondrop IM on the concerns of those. I might deprive myself of on the concerns of their software. Again, I have been avoiding some of their TWS stuff because I don't like their software. But physical build quality stuff, Moondrop seems to me as good as any, to be honest. My explanation for why you still, nonetheless, if that were true, let's say that's true, and I'm positing that it's true, that their build quality is, average. If that were true, and yet you notice a lot of people posting on Reddit or Discord about build quality issues, there's an explanation for that, okay? This is kind of a serious but also kind of joking example that I gave on Discord, which is who has better build quality, Apple or Alltech Lansing? And that shouldn't take you too long to answer, but then the second question would be, which one has more problems in terms of build quality? Well, you've probably never heard of anyone having a problem with the Alltech Lansing device because you might not have even heard of Alltech Lansing, right? That is just a brand that nobody's buying. If 10% of people that buy those are having problems, you're never going to hear about it. Whereas if 0.5% of Apple buyers have problems, you're going to hear about it because a lot of people are buying it. And that is true of Moondrop, okay? These are, if I'm using Squiglink as any indication, and I don't know really how much these units sell, but let's just dive over here real quick. I want to show you on Squiglink, you can go to this Insights tab, and you can get a sense of what IMs people are looking at on a daily basis, all right? Top brands, Moondrop is #1, and it's not close. And here's the thing, it's always Moondrop, okay? Moondrop is consistently the top brand. If I go down here to the top models, all of these, okay, not all of them are Moondrop, but a lot of these are Moondrop, okay? Moondrop is probably the most popular Chi-Fi maker in the space right now. So if they're selling a lot of units, even if they're only, and again, I'm speculating, I don't know, even if they're only having problems with a small number of those, you're going to hear about it more often than you're going to hear about problems with other IMs because they're selling more. So that would be my hypothesis based on my experience having, again, 20 plus Moondrop IMs in my possession, having used them extensively as some of my favorites, and also just kind of like seeing how the internet, can dogpile on Apple for problems, in ways that sometimes they should, but also in some ways that are not really in proportion with the size of the problems. Okay, Ace of Spades, Alltech Lansing shade was not on today's bingo card for me, yeah. I'm not throwing shade at Alltech Lansing. That was just the most random brand name I could remember. I don't even know if they still exist. If they do still exist, I apologize, Alltech and Lansing. I assume those are two different people. Armored Chef. Ooh, here's an interesting question. Despite the price difference, how would you compare the Dusk to the Dunu Mirai? Now, I don't have the Mirai on hand. I did actually just hand that back to Theo earlier this week. I actually prefer the Dusk, personally. A lot of it just is, it's the tonal balance. It's a little bit more mid-rangey, whereas the Mirai is a little bit warmer, a little bit more reserved in the vocal region, which is what I like. I like the more present, transparent sounding vocals, which I think the Dusk does a little bit better. I actually think also the bass quality in the Dusk. Again, I keep talking about how much I like the bass quality in this guy. I don't want to like be like perpetrating HOTUS memes, right? They're horizontally opposed drivers. Is that what's contributing to the sound? I don't know, but I just know that I do really like the bass in this guy. And I do like the bass quality on this guy is the same in the Blessing 3 and very similar in the Solus 2, which I believe also uses that driver configuration. So maybe there's something to it, but I'm not trying to spread that kind of crap. So ultimately, yeah, I actually prefer this over the Mirai. Although, again, if you want more of a warmer, laid back listen, I could definitely see why you might end up preferring the Mirai. Oh, so Ankrama, yeah, I saw you did the super. Hold on, let me go back to that. I apologize. I was in the middle of my rant and I saw your super, which I appreciate. Thank you very much, sir. Did I try to EQ the Dusk and the May at the same curve? Yes, so I talked about this. I had the Blessing 3, the May, and the Dusk all on their own DSP cables, because I've got 3 of them. I've got 3 of these DSP cables, and I use Squiglink tools to identify how I could EQ this to match the EQ of the Dusk and EQ this to match the EQ of the Dusk. And I did that listening comparison. I talked about it in the review a little bit ago. Apologies if you missed it. But the short of it is that I had a very hard time telling any difference between these two. If I was blind, I would not be able to tell the difference. And with these two, there are more differences, but even then, like, it's honestly closer than you'd probably want to think if you just spent $300 on this versus 65 bucks. So yeah, DSP is undoubtedly powerful, can do a lot of really good things. It's just not quite there yet for me. Hopefully that answered your question. And also, subscribe to Ankrama Audio if you haven't yet and you speak Portuguese. Hello is asking, what do I think about the Blessing 3 Dusk versus the Studio 4? So the new Dusk versus the Studio 4. I'll say that I did not do that comparison head to head. So this is just all off the top of my head. But the Studio 4 is maybe a little bit smoother in the treble versus the Dusk, and maybe even a little bit wider in its stereo imaging. But that's probably the only advantages I would give to it. The bass quality is just a lot better on the Dusk. I think that the tonal balance is a little bit better on the Dusk. It's not quite as thin and clinical as the Studio 4 is, not quite as bright and lively as the Studio 4 is, and just better balanced to my ear. So yeah, I would take that. Vittorio asking about the EQ that I used. If you want to join me on Discord, I've got that linked in the description. I've already uploaded the EQ profiles that I used there, but also happy to help you find it if you're there, if you're not there. That said, I did promise Andrew that I'd be ending this live stream right now. So, Andrew, I don't know if he's actually starting right now. Hold on, let me go check. Let me go check if I need to be ending this now. I do have, like I mentioned, family coming over soon. So that's going to lead me to ending the stream. But also, Andrew over at Headphone Show is planning to do a live stream today. Let's see if he's got it scheduled. I don't see it scheduled, but I do think he is. Oh, you're not sure you'll be streaming today. All right, I lied to you all. Well, folks, you've got me for a couple of minutes extra then. Like I mentioned, I do still have family coming, so I'm going to have to wrap this up somewhat soon. But unfortunately, you won't have Andrew's stream to bounce to. Jamie's saying now you have to. That's right. You got to do it now. Sorry. Someone is asking me, how often do I give 5-star reviews for a new IM? Yes, Resolve. I'm definitely watching the fights. So I'll answer the question about the audio in a bit. But yeah, Andrew. So my mom is coming over today. She's spending the weekend with me, and I'm watching fights tonight, which might sound incompatible. But the truth is that the first time I watched fights was with my mom and my aunt. back in the 90s. We were visiting my aunt and she had these UFC on VHS tapes. So it probably was like UFC 1 and 2 and 3. And for whatever reason, we watched them while we were visiting her. And that was kind of like the start of my fascination with UFC. So I've been into mixed martial arts for a long time. There was a period where I fell out of it and I got back into it. Like probably, let's see, I would say so when I watched it in the 90s, I was a kid. I was like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 or something like that. And then I didn't really follow it that closely because I lived in the woods and there wasn't the internet. It was only on pay-per-view and we didn't have a satellite. So I didn't really follow it until I was in my 20s. So maybe like 2004, 2005 era is when I got back into it. And basically ever since then, I've been into it. So Gaethje versus Max, I got to be honest, I am kind of dreading that fight. One, because I like both of them and I don't want either of them to lose. But two is that I don't think it's a good fight for Max, if I'm honest. And Max is so durable that, and I remember what Gaethje did to Tony Ferguson, that I don't want to see that again. So I am a little bit afraid that that's what's going to happen. I hope that's not what happens. But my expectation is that Gaethje is going to be the victor in that fight just because he's bigger and stronger and technical enough. Yeah, the CTE Thunderdome. Dude, the freaking the Gaethje versus Ferguson fight was incredible. But also, I have not watched it since then. I do not want to watch. That was one of the most brutal fights I've ever seen. As someone who watches a lot of MMA, and I know a lot of people like just kind of have like this visceral anti-violence response to seeing MMA. Like obviously, I'm past that. I watch a lot of it, and it doesn't really bother me. But that fight kind of bothers me, and I don't want to see that again. So I'm hoping that's not what we get. Anyway, sorry. Back to the question. Prochazka and Rakic? I don't know, man. I don't know about Rakic. Who am I most excited about? Honestly, was it Charles Oliveira? Who's he fighting? The Oliveira fight was really good. And then the hold on, let's pull this up. That's right. This is UFC talk right now. Oh, never mind. It's Bud Light talk now. YouTube, don't ban me. I don't know if I get banned for Bud ads, but anyway. Oh my gosh, more ads. Bros, your website is an ad. Why are you adding to me? All right, so this fight, I'm excited to see it, but not super excited. Same for this one. This should be a good match, but not super excited. This one I am super excited for and also super scared for. All right, Sarukian versus Oliveira. That should be a really good fight. I'm excited about that guy. This one I don't really care about. I'm sorry. Prochazka and Rakic. Yeah, that should be a good fight. I think Rakic, that will be good. That will be a good fight. It's hard for me to think of a Prochazka fight not being really exciting. And then this is the other one, Kattar versus Sterling. I mean, Sterling's coming up from a weight class below, so it could end up being a problem. But the former champ coming up and fighting like a top contender in the next weight class above, I'm excited for that fight. This fight I'm a little bit interested in just because I've been hearing about Kayla Harrison. I haven't seen her fight yet, but I'll be honest, Holly Holm fights are not usually the most exciting unless she's knocking out Ronda Rousey. This fight should actually be low-key a banger. This should be a banger right here. This one should be pretty good, actually. Not the most technical, but this would be a good little back and forth. This one's like a one for the fans. That one's okay. This one I'm actually pretty interested in. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the fights. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Someone was asking me, how often do I give 5 stars for an IEM? Not a lot. Not a lot. If you want to, Crinacle, you're saying that Max Holloway reps 0 blue. Is that true? Does Max Holloway listen to IEMs? I want to see that. Sorry, we're getting back into the UFC stuff. But if you want to check out like how often I give 5-star rankings, go to squig.link. In the header, look for this rankings button, and that's going to bring you to this view of my ranking of IMs that I've reviewed. Now, I will admit this is a little bit out of date. I haven't been keeping this as up to date as I should, but what you can do is you can filter this by 5 stars, and you can see how many 5-star IMs I've given, which, yeah, I'll be honest, this is probably more than I would still give, right? What I do commonly is I'll go back here and I'll adjust the scores down a little bit. Sometimes, in the case of the LAN, I adjusted the score up, but yeah, this will give you a good sense of all the IMs I've reviewed. These are the ones that have 5 stars. And then these are all the ones that don't, right? So yeah, I don't give a ton of 5 stars. What was the last 5-star I gave to an IM? Ooh, that's actually a good question. Let's go to Super Review on YouTube and I'll tell you. All right. No 5 stars, no 5 stars. This was like a 2-star. No 5-star, no 5, nope, nope, nope. All right, so the last 5-star IM I gave was the Chopin, which was back in like October, to give you a sense. And then before that, probably was the Blessing 3, which was about 6 months before that. So I don't know, for IMs, I typically give 2, maybe 3 5-stars a year. That's about it. Side South, yeah, thank you for correcting me. I did give 5 stars to the Parts Express headbands. Oh, Kirk Richards asking Dusk or IE600. They're different enough that I couldn't tell you outright. I mean, I think if I could only have one, it would be the Dusk because it's just more my tonal balance preference. But I would miss the IE600 because it does some stuff really well, uniquely well. So yeah, but they're both really good. Both really good. Octramut saying, I need to hear the Dusk as soon as possible. Everything in Brazil takes a long time. Sorry to hear, man. You got to take a trip up here to California. It's close, right? Same hemisphere. Brad T, no, I gave the Blessing 3 a 5-star. I did have some caveats with it, right? Again, I was sad that it went the opposite direction I wanted in terms of tonal balance, but nonetheless, I can't really deny that the Blessing 3 at its price range around $300 is just flat out better than everything else. So Resolve, need a Dusk versus Subtonic Storm comparison. You know, the Storm is a very impressive sounding IM. It has like an atmosphericness to it that the Dusk does not have. I'm guessing that's due to tonal balance, but to be honest, I don't think I've seen them both graphed on the same rig, so I'm not even totally sure what the tonal balance of the Subtonic, the Storm is. But I mean, there's a good chance that my honest opinion would come away like I actually prefer the tonality of the Dusk, but I don't think that, again, there's like this really cool atmosphericness to the Storm that I haven't really heard in another IM that would be hard for the Dusk to match. Matthew Hilty asking, does anyone here use closed back headphones? Like really use them? IMs exist and are way more portable and good sounding. Why closed back? So I've been listening to the Dan Clark Audio E3 lately. That is a fantastic sounding closed back. And why would I pick that over an IM? Well, it's just a different sound. In a way that I wouldn't normally describe closed backs. Like I would say, for the most part, I 100% agree with your sentiment. I think IMs kind of make closed back headphones obsolete unless you don't happen to like having something in your ear, which I know is actually true of a lot of people. Not the people here in chat. Everyone here that's in chat, we like IMs, that's cool. But there's definitely a lot of people who want to listen to good audio that don't like the feeling of something stuffed into the ear canal. And for them, closed back headphones can make sense. Unfortunately, most of them just suck. So why would I use the E3 instead of an IM? Well, I would say that despite it, or sorry, apart from it just sounding really good, I think it sounds uniquely good, or it has a unique sound that I can't think of an IM I have that sounds the way it does. So when I'm like hankering for that sound, I'm gonna pull out the E3. Resolve saying, I agree, even though IMs are objectively worse, they are better than closed backs. I mean, it's kind of not close for the most part. The E3 is like probably the only closed back I've heard that I'm not going to say I would trade it. I would trade an IM for it because again, they sound different, but like I'm not listening to that and just thinking I would rather be listening to an IM. I agree, especially for the money, because yeah, the E3 is $2,000. Whereas, you know, for 300 bucks, 360 bucks, you can get a fantastic sounding IM. Frankly, you can get a fantastic sounding IM for 80 bucks if that's all you want to spend. Get the Hexa. Lucas Chen, Dusk versus RSV versus Supernova versus S8. Wouldn't you like to know? I haven't heard the RSV in a while, so I can't say. My Supernova, unfortunately, is on loan, so I haven't been able to compare it directly versus the Dusk. I want to say the treble performance on the Supernova is better. And the Supernova, I think, is going to give me just a stronger stereo image, because that's what the S8 does. The S8 does give me a stronger stereo image versus the Dusk and a smoother overall treble performance. The bass is not as good on the S8, although using these tips, it does get a little bit closer than you might think, given that it's all BA, but it's not on the same level. So like this versus S8, I would probably still pick the S8, but it's close. It is surprisingly close. And then versus the Supernova, again, I don't have the Supernova on hand to compare head to head, but I like the Supernova better than the S8, so I think I'd probably take the Supernova over this guy. Eric Jackman, been rocking my Hexa since release and saved up for this. Hoping it's worth the upgrade. I mean, you'll definitely are going to notice a difference, okay? Despite them both being like very close to my tonal balance preferences, the sound difference between the Hexa and the Dusk are pretty different. Especially with this thing on analog, this is going to sound thinner, more clinical, more contrasty versus the kind of like soft, laid back mid-range of the Hexa. Even calling it laid back is a little bit of a misnomer, but you're going to find that difference. This is going to sound more lively versus something like the Hexa. Because the Hexa does have just kind of like this warm, low contrast character to it, which is frankly what I love about it. Emmanuel asking, what is my favorite of Crin's collabs? I mean, I think this is clearly the best one. Previous to this, it would have been the Dusk 2, or the Blessing 2 Dusk. They sure made that naming convention odd, but I would have said that this is probably his best collab up until, but this thing is just like hands and feet. No, I don't even, what is the turn of phrase I'm looking for there? I don't know, but it is much better. It is just better in every way, strictly better for my tastes than the original Dusk. Side Salad saying, I wonder if more high-end IMs being available with USB-C will help adoption outside of the core audio community, since many don't want to carry dongles or 3.5. It's an interesting question. It's a very interesting question. I don't know, because I don't know if the dongle is the main reason that more people aren't into hi-fi, or if it's the cable at all. Like people are just, TWS is so good. Why would I walk outside the house with anything more than this if I'm not that picky about my sound quality? And the AirPods Pro 2 are really honestly fantastic, like genuinely a very good sounding IM without really any compromises. So if you're not into the hobby of sampling a bunch of different sound signatures, which is frankly what we're in, I don't know that a DSP cable would change that. Chad Wolf, you were disappointed by the cable, but if you had a DAC amp which could copy the EQ profiles released by Crin, like a Qtelix, would you give a more wholehearted rec? Well, I do have a Qtelix. I could do that. And it would have no impact on my recommendation of this IM, because you can do that with any IM. You can make any IM sound better with DSP. I happen to be in the world where I still prefer analog IMs, all right? For all the various reasons I talked about, and probably even more. I still prefer an analog IM. And this thing as is among my favorite analog IMs. Probably at any price, definitely under 500 bucks. I can't think of anything under 700 bucks that I like as much as this guy. So there you go. Although I will tease you with something. All right, I'm going to tease you all. This is going to be the end of my stream. But I'm going to leave you with a tease. You ready for this? You ready for this? Hold on. I got to set up. I got to set up for this tease. Okay, hold on. We're setting up. We're getting ready. We're priming you. All right. Okay. So this is, I didn't bring up the graphs during the review. You can look on Squiglink whenever you want. This is the frequency response of the Dusk 2, the new Dusk, on the DSP cable with the default tuning. All right. This is the ideal Crinacle tuning. This is the best I've heard the Dusk sound. It sounds phenomenal. Okay. But this is on the DSP cable, which again, I don't really like to use. So this is not the sound that I listen to the most, but this is the sound that I preferred. Are you guys ready for this? You ready? Here is a squig of the High Senior Mega 5 EST. All right, I'm going to lay it on top of the DSP Crin squig. And what differences do you notice? None. I mean, that's what the Mega 5 EST squig's like on an analog cable, okay? So this guy I just got in for review, and that's what I'm going to be spending my next weeks listening to, is the Mega 5 EST. And I'll just say up front, like, it sounds very, very good. So it's going to be a positive review, but how positive? I got to spend some time with it to find out. Eric Jackman asking, do I have a rebuttal to the naysayers that claim Dusk isn't relevant without DSP? I mean, yes, because I talked about this earlier, but the rebuttal is basically every IM can be better without DSP. And I reviewed this IM, this entire review I did on the basis of this without DSP, because I don't really want to use the DSP. And without DSP, this is the best IM I can think of under 700 bucks. That would be my take. If you want to use the fact that a DSP cable can make it sound better as a reason to not buy it, don't buy any IM out there, because a DSP cable can probably make any IM sound better. Unless maybe it's the Mega 5 DSP or the Mega 5 EST. But yeah, all right, folks, on that note, thank you all for hanging around. If you haven't already, please do like the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and join us in Discord, all right? I think I mentioned Discord a couple of times in this chat. I'm on Discord all the time, all right? I've got that link in the description. There's a lot of really good people that are here in the chat that are on Discord all the time. If you have questions about audio, they like to help out. If you just want to chat about audio, if you want to understand or like get some early impressions of what I'm reviewing, Discord's usually where to do it. As well, weekly, every week on Wednesdays, I've been doing just kind of like a chill hangout session in like a video space. I don't even remember what they call it. A stage, something like that. But it's fun. And if you want to join us on Discord, link in the description, and I will catch you there or the next super review. Cheers.